What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you guys want to support the channel, you can click on that Into the AM link in the description. You'll get 10% off any of their dope t-shirts and you'll be supporting the channel whenever you do that. Additionally, you can become a patron. If you guys ever wanted to suggest a deck tech, that is the way to do it. I would like to thank my high contributing patrons, Newsome, you rock. Now let's get into today's Precon upgrade and we're talking about Gonti. Alright guys, so you want to play Gonti. Let's talk about some interactions and how this card works, because I see even some players that have been playing for a couple years get confused by this wording on a couple cards. So what does Gonti do? He says, whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, look at the top card of that player's library. You can play that card, spend mana of any type, that kind of sort of thing. Now, the wording I want to talk about is whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that can only trigger once per turn. You can trigger that up to 3 times a turn, assuming you have 3 different opponents. The goal of this deck is to make sure you can get one creature through on each of your opponents each turn. So that means we can exile up to 3 cards a turn, and that's going to provide us a ton of card advantage. Now, there is a way we can trigger this more than 3 times a turn, and that is by using First Strike. Since First Strike damage has its own damage step during combat, we can do First Strike damage, and then we can do regular damage, and that will net us additional cards, kind of allowing us to exile up to 6 per turn. But honestly, this is probably just going to net you an extra card here or there, so we will be including some of that. Now, talking about kind of what the deck I think is lacking, we're lacking a little bit of card advantage, but again, card advantage is kind of hard to evaluate in this deck, where the goal is to steal all your opponent's cards, and that's kind of card advantage. But if we're looking at that, we have to have Gonti on the battlefield, and this deck is definitely lacking protection for a commander that needs to stay on the battlefield throughout the entire game. So we're going to be adding some protection as well, adding some card advantage, just making this deck a little more usable, and we're going to do it on an extreme budget. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, let's get into this Precon upgrade. The first thing we're going to add is some of that protection. So we will be adding Swiftfoot Boots to the deck, and additionally we will be adding Siren Stormtamer. I just think it's a very solid evasive creature. It can trigger a commander pretty easily and protect our commander at the same time. Memory Lapse can also be very funny in this deck. We're going to take their broken thing, counter it, put it on top of their library, and then steal it from them. I also wanted to dip into the Vigilance interaction that I was talking about at the start of the video, so Weeping Angel and Glissa are going to be perfect for this. They both essentially have Death Touch and First Strike, which means whenever they deal First Strike damage to a creature, they're going to instantly die, so our opponents are heavily incentivized not to block these creatures, and then when they deal First Strike damage, we are going to get that First Strike trigger and then the regular combat trigger, so hopefully we can get some extra triggers off of these guys using our commander. Glissa is also just very flexible. We do get card advantage and solid removal at the same time. Grim Hireling is one of the cards I really sprung for in this upgrade guide, and it's probably one of the best adds to the deck. It's going to be solid removal, and it's going to net you up to 6 treasure tokens a turn. If we have First Strike, again, we can go ahead and get more triggers off of her, but even 6 treasures a turn is really going to make it to where you're able to cast all of these spells you're exiling, which can kind of be an issue when you have so much card advantage. Another thing we have to take into account is we're going to be exiling lands off the top of our library as well. So Azusa's Lost But Seeking and Druid class are going to allow us to play additional lands. Our commander does read you may play those cards, so lands are fair game. This is just going to make it to where whenever we do exile a land, we're happy to see it instead of bummed out it's not a spell we can cast. Night Spectre is another card that synergizes extremely well with our commander, and additionally it is very evasive. Toski is another card I really sprung for, but I think he's kind of necessary in the deck. He provides a ton of card advantage, and even the secondary commander is going to double up on all of those card draw triggers, so it's going to synergize really well with the deck and be some broken card advantage. Deluxe Dragster, now this card is underrated in general, and I think it's going to fit perfectly in this deck. We can go ahead and crew it up very easily, and then additionally we're going to steal more cards while triggering our commander. Not to mention, this guy is basically unblockable. Biden of Thassa is another solid card in this deck. Now, it forces our opponents to full swing. Now, I can't guarantee that those creatures aren't coming at us, but I can guarantee that they're going to be untapped and open for us to attack into on our turn. Plus, we're going to get a decent amount of card advantage off of this card. Champion of Liamholt seemed perfect in this deck. We are going to be casting a lot of our opponent's creatures, and our opponent's creatures are probably not playing unblockable tribal. So the fact that we can use Champion to make all of our opponent's creatures unblockable as well is going to be very synergistic for this deck. Additionally, we are going to run Tyrannid Harridan. Now, this is kind of a pet card of mine, but this card just gets insane very quickly. You're going to net a huge board state of very evasive flyers that can really start dealing a lot of damage to your opponents and will ensure that we can consistently trigger our commander every single turn. We're also going to add Changeling Outcast for a very early drop that's unblockable. Azor Warding Familiar, this is going to be really good for more protecting of our commander. He's going to be a pretty big target because if they get rid of him, the deck's just not going to work very well. Glenalendra Archmage, again, it has evasion, it has protection for our commander. It's kind of the boxes we want to be checking. I think both of these additions are going to be solid in the deck. Elderbrain also seems like a no-brainer. Yeah, I hate myself too. But anyway, this card fits perfectly with the commander. We're going to get to exile their entire hand. That's just messed up, kind of salt inducing, but that's kind of what this deck is doing anyway. It's just going to give us a ton of options to cast. It's going to ruin our opponent's game plan, and it's just going to synergize perfectly with the deck. I did want to hit you guys with a few non-budget options just in case you wanted to upgrade this deck a little more. Gix is kind of going to be amazing in this deck. Yes, a little pricey, but you're going to get more card advantage. It's going to incentivize your opponents to attack as well, which again just allows you to get more creatures in on them, triggering your commander even more. And then you can take that massive hand you just drew, discard it all, and cast a ton of free spells off of your opponent's libraries. Who doesn't want to do that? Ink Eye Servant of Oni also seems very perfect in this deck, especially since we have a ton of unblockable creatures. We get to steal their best creature from their graveyard and put it on our side of the battlefield, which is exactly what this deck wants to do anyway. And then after that, you're going to have a 5/4 rat that just deals a ton of damage. It has Regenerate, and again, it does still have the ability to steal even more creatures. Thada Adel is even becoming more and more powerful. I've noticed since people have started running the One Ring, I just kind of want to shove Thada Adel in decks to punish them for it. Now we can grab the blue deck's best card out of their deck and play it, or we're just grabbing Soul Ring, which is probably still very good in that scenario. That's going to do it for this Precon upgrade, guys. Don't forget to check the description down below. It'll have all of the cards I cut in the moxfield link. Additionally, guys, keep your lookout for this guy being built on the channel. He is one of those commanders that's just so interesting to me. I'm going to do a full build from the ground up, but for now, here's a solid budget upgrade guide. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I would like to thank my patrons, Newsome, Excessum, Creator, Chicken Salad. You guys are amazing. Really keep the channel going. I couldn't appreciate it enough. With that being said, I hope this helps you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.